Great. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. Welcome to OhioX Product Roundtable, Uncertainty in Product Discovery. Appreciate everybody joining live, and those of you that are watching later, appreciate your attention viewing us on YouTube. Again, my name is Shawn Leitner, Product Management Consultant and Coach for Pathfinder Product Labs. I am located here in Cleveland, Ohio. Pathfinder is out of Columbus, Ohio. So got the I-71 corridor mostly covered. Rich covers the other part. Pathfinder Product Labs is a product management consulting coaching firm. We are a small firm, about 14 people, where we help companies large and small create strong product teams, product organizations, product-led organizations, to create awesome and delightful products for their customers, and making sure that the products we create and our clients create align with the mission and vision of the organization. Aside from my day job at Pathfinder, I'm also an avid networker. I started the the Cleveland Product Network Group 5 years ago. Has 700 members. We host two events a month. And I also chair this product roundtable series for OhioX. OhioX, for those of you that don't know, is a membership advocacy group in Ohio, supporting all organizations from a technology innovation perspective, creating that connective tissue in Ohio for all of us to be able to, create better products, support each other in technology innovation efforts, and really, support each other in all the work that we're doing in the public sector, private sector, all the industries, all the domains that we in Ohio that succeed at, and we can help each other with that. Very excited to have two additional members on our panel today, Chang and Rich Theil, very thought leaders in product management, agile consulting, organizational design, human-centered design. Looking forward to talking about uncertainty in product discovery with them today. So, Charlotte, if you'd introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I am currently the Director of Instructional Design and Training Services for a company called Industrial Logic. It is based out of Berkeley, California, but I live and grew up in Ohio. I'm currently based in Columbus. But I have a lot of experience in product strategy, and I enjoy working with executive managers and teams to create what I call systems of compassion that provide sustainable, humane, inclusive experiences for all contributors throughout product development. I've been recently focused on launching new products, marketing and brand management through my role as instructional design and training services, and focusing on designing change within organizations. Previously, I've worked with companies across multiple countries, industries, and company sizes, performing every role on a delivery team, iteration manager, product designer, user experience, BA, developer, tester. When I'm not doing this sort of thing, I have two dogs, which I think some of you on this call have met. You met at least one of them anyway. Rocky, he has great eyeliner, and I also love rock climbing. So if you like products, dog, and rock climbing, DM me.
All right, Rich.
My turn. All right. So, hey, everybody. My name is Rich Theil. I'm the founder and CEO of the Noble Foundry, a small consulting shop here in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's how we got the 71 corridor covered. So we focus on both agile and product consulting. And a lot of it's just centered around coaching. Like, how do you implement software tools? How do you create software tools and software products more effectively using the processes and tools and the techniques and the capabilities that we've all got? So I spent 7 years at P&G. Then I was actually CIO at an organization here in Cincinnati called Crossroads, where I both led the product management function as well as the agile transformation, the digital transformation in that space. So loads of fun. And I love doing that kind of work, getting involved with that level and that type of change going on in organizations. Because I think that we don't give enough power and credit to the people on the teams. And so I'm really passionate about people and being able to bring the fullness of themselves to the work that they're doing. I've been consulting for the past 4 years, doing that for a variety of different sized companies, small companies, large companies, and enjoying every bit of it. I met Shawn at a client, actually a larger client that we both worked on not that long ago, but we've been working together probably for over a year now. So I'm married. We have 3 kids. Our oldest is 21. Our youngest is 15. I also have a dog. And while I've never done rock climbing, we do a lot of backpacking as a family. So anything in the outdoors. So that's me. Looking forward to talking with everybody here and hopefully learning some things as well.
Very cool. Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks, Rich. So I guess maybe we should start with, what is product discovery, right? We talk about we're going to talk about the uncertainty of it, but let's kind of have a baseline conversation about what is product discovery, right? Oversimplifying things, of course. We have an idea as an organization to build something. Senior leaders are excited. The teams have found an opportunity somehow to create something memorable and cool. There's energy around it. There's budget for it. There's time committed to it. There is commitments to it from other stakeholders. There's expectations from customers that they'll have some new features and capabilities to use. So then we start building it, right? Teams are staffed to build it. They're given, the proper tools and technology to build it. They're positioned to build it. There's processes and structure to be able to build it and deliver it, market it and support it operationally. And then we build it, we put it into production, and we get 5 stars, right? Existing customers adopt it. They stay longer. They spend more money on it. We get new customers. We love it. They love it. They leave your competition in the dust because your products are far superior. They give you glowing reviews on social media or on app stores, or your net promoter score skyrockets, and everybody's happy and everybody's making bonuses and everybody wins, just like Vegas, right? Well, we know that that's not reality, right? That might be the utopian state that we're all trying to get to, but that's not exactly how it works. That's very much an oversimplification, but there might be some vision in people's heads that is how it actually works. But to actually be good at it, right? To actually be good at product discovery, right? There's a lot that goes into it. It's very complex, a bit patronizing in terms of the oversimplification of the previous slide, but there's a lot that goes into it, right? This is from Teresa Torres, who's a thought leader on continuous discovery and product discovery. There's a lot there. Her 3 tenets are collaborative, continuous, experimental, right? Collaborative. Do you have the right people involved within the organization and to determine the solutions, the product market fit, the opportunity that might exist, the challenge you're trying to overcome? Do we have the right people at the table, right? It kind of depends on what products you're building, what kind of domain you're in. The people that are at the table, do they understand the role that they have, right? If you're building a software product, you have probably engineering, you probably have design, you have, architecture, you might maybe have some vendors, third parties involved. So the collaboration is key here. And then, continuously working on it, right? The days in the past when you say, well, I got a really good product, a really good idea. Let's build this 70-page requirements document, throw it over the wall to engineering. A year and a half later, you have a product that the customers will love, right? That's not how the world works anymore for various reasons. And maybe that's not how the world ever worked well to begin with. There's, because it doesn't work that way anymore or never did, right? There's experiments that need to be run, tests and prototypes and check-ins with customers or third parties or stakeholders that we can actually understand, constantly assessing where we are within the process, and checking our biases at the door, continuously learning, getting more data, qualitative data, quantitative data, things like that. And you have to be prepared a bit to be humbled here, right? Are you prepared to be wrong? These things that you thought were correct, right? Either the assumptions or previous questions, interviews you asked, they might change along the way. So, very easy to say, very hard to do. Any thoughts, Charlotte and Rich, in terms of how we can all be better at good at product discovery here, from a theory and academic perspective?
You want to go first?
Good.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I was actually in a conversation earlier today regarding continuous discovery, and one of the sort of litmus tests that came up was if when COVID hit, you had to throw out your roadmap, like if you just literally chucked it out the window and went, okay, we're going to do something else, versus you were in a place of continuous discovery anyways, then it might tell you something about where you're at in your continuous discovery journey. So I just thought it was an interesting litmus test, if a little imperfect, but still a helpful way to benchmark how are we doing it at keeping a pulse on customer needs, on their desires, and being able to navigate those changes when they come up. COVID's an extreme example, but I think it illustrates the broader point of continuous discovery as a discipline. So yeah, just initial thoughts.
Yeah, I really like that. I like how the way you described that makes you feel so safe, somehow, because normally if you were to say, I'm going to throw out the roadmap, I think there'd be a lot of fear in the room, but the way you described it felt yeah, because we have each other, it's fine. And I guess my thoughts about it, I was reminded earlier today. So I've been thinking actually a lot about joyfulness and happiness at work. And so one of the books that I'm reading, I'm just going to show it to you all. It's called Creativity Inc. It's by the president of Pixar Animation and Disney Animation. And so one of the topics is about the things that we cannot see, which is a lot of what we're talking about today, which is uncertainty and product discovery. So I'm just going to read a little quick quote. The hidden and our acknowledgement of it is an absolutely essential part of rooting out what impedes our progress, clinging to what works, fearing change, and deluding ourselves about our roles and our own success. Candor, safety, research, self-assessment, and protecting the new are all mechanisms we can use to confront the unknown and to keep the chaos and fear to a minimum. These concepts don't necessarily make anything easier, but they help us uncover hidden problems and thus enable us to address them. So I thought that I'd share that with you all.
That sounds great. One thing that comes to mind here is particularly how we work together, right? The team aspect, a little bit like the hidden, like you were mentioning, Charlotte, and a lot of assumptions that occur here, and which stakeholders are involved and things like that. So, and it's not necessarily internal, but external too, right? The customers, you assume certain things happen. Rich, you mentioned the pandemic's kind of crystallized some of that when you think of certain domains, when you think of retail or healthcare or digital banking, right? Those things, some of those solutions that we're kind of expecting now in terms of picking up your groceries or DoorDash, things like that. Do banking through ATMs or online through mobile apps. Those were already there. Those solutions were already there, right? So, but things accelerated that. Some of the you threw the roadmap up because some of those features and capabilities were accelerated due to unforeseen circumstances. And we can't necessarily account for those in our roadmaps all the time, global pandemics and some extreme kind of situations. But you have to be nimble and agile with a small a, not a big A, when we want to be able to do solutions and anticipate what our customers might need.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's something, I described it as a discipline. I think it's something that we have to be really disciplined and intentional about in our day to day. And Charlotte, I appreciate what you said about candor and openness with respect to the team. I read a book not that long ago on psychological safety that talked about one of the practices that they have is to be very, very, I forget what they're called, but they have these meetings where everybody comes together and they're just very frank about whatever it is that they're learning and whatever it is that you're making, the way that they're responding to it. And it there are some rules around not overstepping, you have to take what people say, but it's never personal, that sort of thing. So you may know the name of that practice. I forget what it is, but super good.
Okay. That all sounds great, right? Product discovery, right? Making sure that we're collaborative and that we can move quickly. We can, continuously discover. We can experiment with solutions and, MVPs and prototypes and those kinds of things. But it's probably too hard, right? I mean, it's really hard to do these kinds of things, particularly in, existing organizations, which, you have products that already exist. You have customers that are already using your products. They may even, when you think of like maybe API solutions, for example, where you have computer systems that are already exchanging data with each other. So those kinds of things are difficult to change quickly. So some of this stuff is academic, and we try to figure out like how we can get better at it. But there's that uncertainty about, okay, how can we do it? How do we do it? And even if you go down the path to continuous discovery and strong product discovery and lessening risk with doing that, you could still encounter headwinds in-house, right? You could have the head of engineering who says, this is just too hard, with the tech stack we have, or we got a mountain of tech stack that we need to overcome. Or from a staffing perspective, we don't have the right, or we're moving to the cloud, those types of things. Or we just went through a merger and acquisition, so we got to incorporate these two systems together. You got a head of operations that says, hey, things are working fine now. Like, why do we have to change anything, right? It's always worked that way, and we're used to it, right? We understand it, right? We support it, we're efficient. Or you could have a project management office that says, we didn't exactly know what features you're going to put in this year and in every release next year too, from say a budgeting or a forecasting perspective, right? So kind of give you a glimpse as to some of the things that we all encounter as to why this is hard. These are things that we've encountered, the three of us, and I'm sure all of you listening here have encountered some variation of these challenges. Welcome to hear more, of course, but these are kind of the things that we've seen. I'll pick two of my favorite out, and then I'll turn over to Charlotte and Rich to kind of get their perspective. But one for me is perfect is the enemy of good. One of my favorite sayings. Many organizations, particularly large enterprise organizations, maybe they're highly regulated, or they have thin margins. Let's make that the perfect solution before we actually launch it to the customer, right? We're afraid of any maybe bugs that we might introduce, or less than desirable experience that we've kind of introduced based on one reason or another. But don't let you can still produce a good solution in a timely manner, right? If you follow kind of product discovery and continuous discovery principles and processes, and know your customer base well, have good partners in-house with operations and marketing and engineering and design. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Still to have a good solution and iterate upon that afterwards. The other one that I like to pick out that I've seen in my experience is the wrong incentives. So when you have, say, parts of the organization saying, we're incentivized, say, from an engineering perspective, for example. Engineering is incentivized to have less bugs and push, say, more velocity, more code, more features, more capabilities. Say a digital solution, for example. This has happened in banking, for example, that I've seen. So then you push out like a digital banking solution. So digitally apply for a loan, or open up a checking account, or apply for a merchant account. But another part of the organization, which might be in the branches, for example, of a bank, they don't push those digital solutions because they're not incentivized to, right? Their incentives are to open a checking account in the branch and then, upsell them, say, on a loan, for example, or, equipment loan, a merchant solution, those types of things. They're not incentivized to do. So those are diametrically opposed. They're not complementary. And before you have two different organizations pulling the chain in different directions. So those are kind of the two that I see that are the most interesting. Charlotte, for you, in your interactions with either organizations you've consulted with or been a part of, what are the two challenges that kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, I think the two that stand out for me, one is the general uncomfortability with being uncertain. And that's why I think I was really appreciating what Rich was talking about earlier, because I mean, because it's not just, hey, let's build up some probabilistic forecast. It's not just that, right? There's actually some like emotion tied into this, which is okay because we're human beings. Like it's okay to say that we have emotions, but these emotions are leading to behaviors that are sort of constricting the ability to actually be fully innovative or to fully discover. And that's really hard stuff, right? Because there are societal expectations of what leadership and competency look like, right? So, so some of the things that I see with respect to that are things like bravado over bravery, individuals over teams, and experience over like instinct. And so the uncomfortability with being uncertain is one. And then the other thing is sort of related to what you were talking about, Shawn, which is, sort of going down the systems thinking and org design. So you were talking about, the wrong incentives and people are going to behave in the system that they're in, right? That's how they're going to behave. For me, it's somewhat similar too. So I often don't see processes and models that account for different levels of not knowing. And because there's different, just like there's different levels of knowing, there's also different levels of unknowing. And so at a really high level, you have, let's say on one end of the spectrum, something like scientific research, right? We just don't even know what we don't know yet, right? We literally have to take a step to know. But on the other end, we absolutely know. And not only do we know the things that we don't know yet, and we just need to take a step forward to get the information, right? And then you have everything in between. And especially because a lot of the products that we're dealing with are technology-based, and the rate of technology is increasing so much that there's a lot that we don't know. Our processes are, not really accounting for that different levels of unknowing. So those are the two.
I appreciate you channeling your inner Donald Rumsfeld with your known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, and unknown unknowns.
If I had a nickel every time, no, I'd have 5 cents. Yeah.
I was not expecting him to make an appearance on today's presentation. So, Rich, what have you seen?
I'm going to pick a couple here. Let's start with teams aren't empowered. Way too often I see that the thing that happens is that leadership decides we're going to go do this. And rather than letting the people who are closest to the problem, closest to the customer, like who spend all their days thinking about this, rather than letting them be the ones to solve it, they're like sort of directing and dictating what should be happening. And so that sort of boxes you in because it's just not the team themselves doesn't have the power. I heard a definition for a knowledge worker that I thought was really helpful. The definition of a knowledge worker is somebody who, when in doing whatever work they're doing, they know more than the person that is managing them. And I thought that difference is like, oh yeah, that's actually really what's going on. It's not that they're working with knowledge. It's the level of knowledge that they have and the depth of expertise that they have. So what we see are teams that just aren't, and really it's probably a leadership problem, that the leadership isn't comfortable letting go of and just strictly allowing the teams to tackle the kinds of challenges that they're seeing and learning about from customers. So that idea of handing that over is scary. We want to sort of enable that and allow that to happen. So, and another one I think that is probably really common is getting access to people. We've had this. Imagine if you ever worked on like a medical product or something like this. I was working on this is a year ago. Working with a business, we were serving doctors in the business, and you're trying to get doctors who are very busy and get paid very large amounts of money to give you 30 minutes to have a conversation. We tried a number of things. Like I literally am sending mails and getting nothing but crickets on the way back. And one of the things that helped solve that I know we're not talking solutions about any of these things. I think we're okay to talk about them. But one of the things that solved that is like there were some relationships that we were able to leverage to get that. So it became like a friends and family kind of an ask, as opposed to an unknown guy, Rich, asking for you to provide some input. But getting access to the customers and being able to talk to them and engage with them and really feel what they're saying and seeing their body language and like all that stuff is absolutely critical to discovery. If you're not doing those things, you're not really doing discovery, I don't think. But yeah, that's probably the second one for me.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that one, Rich, too. Those are great, both for Charlotte and Rich. But I would also piggyback, like, absolutely access to customers, but also, that body language of your internal stakeholders too, right? The, operations teams and, legal, compliance, risk, those kinds of the players, right? Having that partnership. Now, you can't have, 50 people in the room necessarily, doing solutioning and ideation, those types of things, but making sure they're involved. And that's kind of leads into, the next slide in terms of how do we deal with this uncertainty, right? How can we understand product discovery is hard, right? We understand that it's uncertain and that there's risk involved, but there's got to be ways that good organizations, how did organizations get good at this? How does that help them create better products? What are things that they've been able to leverage, whether it's from a framework perspective, model perspective, or just how they work well together. So there's a couple different things there that we can talk through. These are things, this is not a comprehensive list by any stretch, right? There's no one thing, there's no silver bullet here. There's no one thing that you can implement to make things easier. But there are some things that the three of us have kind of lived through and seen work, and I'm sure there's plenty of others. Rich, I guess maybe kick it off to you. What have you seen work at organizations in your experience that are good at product discovery and which can then lead to creation of better products?
Yeah, sure. First one that comes to mind is technology team involvement. I think this is what you're looking for in these. There is, and I think Charlotte, you alluded to this one in the beginning, actually, in one of the first things that you said. You've got really smart people on the front lines. Hear things that you're not going to hear in whatever role or capacity you might be in. You want them to be engaged in hearing what your customers are saying. This is a way to build enough knowledge, and I'll get beyond just customers saying stuff here in a second, but this is a way to build enough knowledge in those really smart people that you can have really intelligent dialogue about, like, what's the problem that we're solving and why are we trying to solve it and how is it going to help us grow this business and how is it going to serve customers and like all of those kinds of questions. So I would say that's the first one. And then a second one for me that I wanted to talk about was problem framing. I'm not sure we invest enough time describing the framing of a problem. And so we end up like increasing the uncertainty in the problem by like not having a really clear perspective on what the actual problem is. What I mean by problem framing is, do we have agreement around what we're actually solving and what we're trying to accomplish? Example, like we're going to make an electric car company. And the question is, well, why? Are we trying to save the planet? That's one set of framing. Or are we trying to improve battery technology so that when we go to Mars, we have better batteries? Like, and those are, I don't think that's talked about very often, but I think that's part of the plan. I don't know. Elon didn't ask me. But like that why really matters, and how we frame that problem helps us to feel more rooted and more grounded and to find and identify better solutions to the challenges that we're seeing. There's a lot in problem framing, but it's really understanding the why. Who is that? Simon Sinek? Know your why. So it's that within product discovery. So that's it for me on those two.
Yeah, cool. I'd like to double click on one thing you said, Rich. You mentioned involvement of technology teams.
Yeah.
In some environments, that's very much supported. in some environments, it's like, you guys tell me what to do and I'll just do it, right? I don't have time, right? I'm fighting this fire over here. I'm on call this weekend, or I got this mountain of technical debt. I got to do this, tech specs or architecture documents for the compliance or whatever. Like how can you have that supported technology environment, and sometimes how many representatives should be there, right? Caveats apply here, so talking generalities, but how to best involve technology teams when doing product discovery.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of thoughts come to mind, including one embarrassing story. The you want them involved. The embarrassing story. One time, I was I'm trying to get a group of engineers. I'm standing in front of a room of like 70 engineers. Like, I want you guys to go talk to customers. And I was saying, like, what do you? They were giving me pushback, and I think the heart of the pushback, to answer the question that you're asking, is around this idea of like, I don't quite know how to engage. There's also an aspect of I don't want to engage, and I'll explain that with the embarrassing part of the story. But like, I don't quite know how to engage. So I think there's an equipping thing that has to happen in order to facilitate that at the engineering level. Because what's intuitive to me, I'm standing in front of this room of 70 people, and I say, hey, what do you do if you go to a party and you don't know somebody? Because I was trying to get them to like literally walk into the room, like shake somebody's hand and say the thing. And somebody raised their hand and they're like, I leave. And I was like, oh, shit. Massive failure on my part in front of 70 people, because I expected him to say, I go introduce myself to somebody. I'm like, foolish. And so, I think there's a level of equipping that has to happen. And then I think it's what did we end up doing? I think we ended up for that, like, pairing people so that we weren't sending them off one by one, but we were sending folks off in pairs, perhaps somebody who was more comfortable and somebody who was less comfortable engaging in those conversations. That eased the path to the actual dialogue and discussion. You could tag along and you could learn and come away feeling like you've learned some things and hopefully reapply that elsewhere. So I think I got to the heart of your question by the time I was done there, Shawn, but that's what we did in that case.
Yeah, absolutely.
I learned to never ask that question in front of a group of people ever again.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. Charlotte, what come to mind for you?
I definitely think there needs to be a follow-on session of embarrassing stories that involve technology teams. I think that everyone on this call has. So it's like, It's like immediately I was like, oh, that'd be such a great fun, like maybe happy hour to discuss. My answers are like really similar, I think, to what you both have been talking about. One, very similar to this idea of problem framing. For me, I think about treat different ideas differently. I'm not saying that everything has to be like a unique unicorn, but what I am saying is that if we think about the different levels of how much we know and how much we don't, I think that success looks different, right? And so when we think about the outcomes and the ROIs, I would expect something different for, let's say, a new feature within an existing product versus something completely new, right? So if I'm, building on this idea of electric cars and like cobalt and batteries, which is sort of interesting that I just learned that yesterday and I'm getting to use that right now. Cobalt, everyone get some cobalt. That's what you need.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Cobalt is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so like if I'm, let's say, trying to invent, let's say, a coffee maker that fits within a Tesla, that's like totally different than, let's say, a collaboration between Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Let's call them Jalon, because Jeff Bezos and Elon, right? So Jeff and Elon, Jalon. Okay, so I'm going to work on that branding. It's really
heard it here first, though, everybody.
Yeah, heard it here first, everyone. But yeah, I mean, them doing, let's say, a joint collaboration for teleportation. Right. So what does success look like? What do the timelines look like? What does the ROI look like? Those would be like really different, like the whole process would be different, but also just the expectations would be really important to start managing those. And so that's my first one. Treat different ideas differently with respect to what success looks like. My second one is also, again, very similar to what we're all talking about. Build a team around you. That, and also a sponsor if you can, right? So I tend to sort of follow the whole like viability, feasibility, and desirability. If you can build a group of people around you that with complementary skills in those spaces, because that's what you need for product stuff, and where you can sort of build that candor and trust and safety that we were talking about. So you can have that safety, so you can get that feedback, and then also you're not also by yourself. Like, not only does it create a better product, but it also creates safety with respect to the management of others, like either out and up and around, right? So those are my ideas. My two things were very similar.
Yeah, I think, Charlotte, that's a good point, particularly the trust, the candor, the safety, because many times what you've seen that I've seen in product discovery is the challenges and headwinds you see in terms of that can't be done here, or we're fine the way we are. But it's easy to say that to one person. But if you can't discount if you get 5, 6, 8 people of different backgrounds, different experiences, different roles within the organization, kind of to lock arms and say, hey, this is a good idea, right? This is a good solution. Here's the problem. Let's rally around this problem. Let's understand it more, right? This would be beneficial to our customers. The market demands it, essentially. This is what we've learned through discovery and quantitative and qualitative data that we've been able to accumulate, customer interviews, those types of things. So if you can build that, that allows you to gain credibility as a loose team, even if you're not going to be on the team that delivers said solution. That helps build that, and then it builds the trust, and that stuff has a way of gaining momentum going forward. So I do like that. Okay, cool. One thing that I would kind of jump on here, a couple of things, is iterate quickly and more often. Kind of back to Rich's point earlier about continuous discovery, right? You're not going to know everything up front, right? And I know the term minimal viable product, MVP, is kind of had a negative connotation assigned to it anymore, because it's been misused. But I think, let's think of the intention of it. Let's get something out there in front of our customers. Goes along with my second point, in terms of involving customers through interviews and prototypes and A/B testing, right? And getting in front of the people that will actually use it. I've been in many product discussions and ideation solutioning conversations where people say, well, I'm not going to use them. I'm like, well, you've never used this product, right? We're building the product for other people to use. So let's talk to those other people. Thank you for your opinion, but let's go ahead and try to figure out a safe way to get it in front of customers, and present in such a way that this is a test, right? It's an option that we're exploring, and we will build it based on assessments and analyses and data and impressions and those types of things. So that kind of helps build, again, some momentum when we kind of attach all these things together to be able to do better product discovery. And just sort of ingrain that in the behavior of the team and the organizations, so that it becomes, muscle memory, right? When you go to the batting cage and you take a pitching lesson or golf lesson, you're breaking some old habits. You got to rinse and repeat that to be able to gain hold and then move on to the next thing. So those are kind of two things that kind of help me deal with uncertainty in product discovery. Cool. All right. Well, that's the meat of it. Ultimately, there's a lot. The good thing about uncertainty in product discovery is it's not a unique problem, right? We may think in the organizations that we work for or work with that every environment is unique, but there's still some themes that within our organizations that others encounter as well. And there's lots of material out there. Some you have to pay for, like a book, for example, or just some blogs, or my favorite product resource is Twitter, to kind of learn from others. And these are some of the resources that the three of us have found successful in the past. One thing that I like is the Lean Product Playbook. Just thinking about the structure and the rigor for being able to produce what is needed and understand the problem, like the framing that Rich and Charlotte were talking about, and really executing on that and then iterate upon it. That's kind of one of my go-tos when I think about how to get better product discovery and create better products. Charlotte, what are your kind of go-to resources here?
Yeah, so hard. I love resources. So the first thing I should do is probably make reference to some free product canvases that me and somebody else that you all, like actually a fair bit of you probably know, his name is Matt Barco. We actually co-created them. I'm putting a link into the chat. There are 9 free product canvases. And essentially what he and I did is we went through essentially the product lifecycle, and we started to think about, okay, what can we do to try to help teams like work on their product practice, right? And so it starts everywhere from things like, product-driven organizations like becoming a PDO, and things like the taxonomy and the product identification. And we can, we go through portfolio allocation, product strategies, pricing and packaging, discovery, like we're talking about today, and just all the way through into, evolutionary technical design, prioritization, flow-based product road mapping, et cetera. Anyway, there's 9 of them. So anyway, those are yours. You can use them. That's very much, again, they're one-pagers. So they're not going to, it's very much like color within the lines type of thing. It's not going to like solve all the problems. But it's something to try. So that's the first thing. And I guess the second thing that I would call out is one of the books you have up here, Strengthsfinder. This book is normally, I think, used for individuals, and the basic premise of Strengthsfinder, or the very first iteration of this was called Now Discover Your Strengths, is the idea that a lot of times we get feedback as individuals about how to get better at the things that we're not generally very good at. I love this book because this book tries to turn that idea on its head and say, guess what? In life, you are good at some things and you're not good at other things. Like, that's just the reality of things, because that's how chromosomes work, right? A to T, G to C, just how it works. Gattaca, just watch Gattaca if anyone wants to know more about that. But for real, right? Like, that's how it is. And so the idea is we often get feedback on the things we're not very good at. And so the idea is, if we are constrained by time and energy, which is also a reality of this universe as we know it, then they propose that we should focus on our strengths, because if you donate the same amount of time and energy, you're going to go farther on your strengths than you would in the things you're not as good at. And I love this idea because I think getting really good at the things I'm bad at isn't as, it's like good to manage those things, but I love the idea of, hey, why don't I get really good at the things that I'm really good at and that I love already, right? But I think that this idea holds true for organizations and products too, right? Because it requires self-awareness from the organization. And I think, Shawn, you had mentioned this in previous discussions, the idea of a team, right? I think, Rich, this goes to your idea. What is the team good at? What are we good at? What are we not good at? What are our competitors good at? What do our customers need? Like, imagine this. I hope everyone's envisioning something either like a Venn diagram or a 2x2 right now, because this, I think, starts to drive toward what we can really excel at. And so those would be my two, the freebie product canvases and Strengthsfinder.
Excellent. Rich, what resources are your go-tos to help in this process?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things that I want to share. I'm going to share 2 more books besides what's up there, and then I want to end with an encouragement a little bit. The one is an older book called The Right It. So it's I don't know if it's arguably a classic or not, but it's about early discovery stuff, like how do you run tests and how do you do experimentation and things like that. So I found that book really helpful. And so suggesting a book called The Right It. A second one that we didn't put on here is called What's Your Problem? If nothing else, I like that book for its title. But it's about problem framing, which was referenced on here a couple of times, can also be a really helpful thing. The last bit that I want to end on, like, I'm thinking about, like, okay, well, what are the barriers that prevent, like, if everybody's on the call and they're like, yeah, this all sounds really great, but like, what's the but about? And I almost guarantee that it's like time related and like the magnitude of, like, okay, we've got to learn this discipline, and yeah, Charlotte's right, like, do the things you're good at. And also, I don't know if I'm any good at this or not, because it's like, like you're asking that question. And I saw this picture. I'm sure it was on LinkedIn. I don't know who posted it, but it's not mine. I don't get credit for it. Somebody else does. Maybe it was Charlotte, for all I know. It's this person pushing this giant ball, and it was like before I start the thing. This is what I imagine in my mind. It's like pushing this giant ball, and then there's this this picture to the right of it. It's like while I'm doing it, and the ball, instead of being like this big, is now like this big. And then the third one off to the right is after it's done, and it's like this little tennis ball, the kicking down the thing. And the point being, it might feel like big and complex and difficult, but like jumping in and like starting to push the ball makes it smaller and more doable and more possible. So I just want to end on it from, I'm sure there'll be other, I don't know if Shawn's going to ask us other questions or not, but like I want to end on an encouraging note to say, like, you can do this. You can go start pushing the ball. As you do that, as you develop your own skills, as you develop your own capabilities, you're going to get to a place where you're like, oh, that wasn't really so bad. Now I've got some capabilities that I didn't have before. And you know what? Turns out I like it. Or you know what? Turns out I don't like it. I should really give this to somebody else to do. Both are valid and good ideas. But encouraging you to move the ball, see what happens.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate the uplifting tone to end. And I guess to piggyback on what you just said is, we humans sometimes make the problems bigger than they actually are, right? I mean, it's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, right? Let's not. Yes, we could try to boil the ocean, but that doesn't make any sense. And to use a cliche, but the problems that we're dealing with are most likely not unique. So let's just try to break it up into consumable chunks. That's the theory of, Scrum and sprints and MVPs and those types of things. So you can take that same philosophy within product discovery and try to just break it down to be as simple as possible. So cool. So I like to end these presentations with a quote, 2 quotes today. So this is the first quote, get a bonus quote after this. Confucius, famous Chinese philosopher, politician, poet, maybe a product OG, maybe even. He said the first rule in being a wise is that you must first define the problem, right? It's the framing thing we talked about, like, do we really understand the problem, right? And that takes time, right? And many times, I think, Rich, you hit it on this, like some of these things come down to we don't have enough time to work on the thing. But it will save you so much time later, right? If we have the right resources and the right mindset, the right approach, and access to data and customers, the things we talked about today. So if we can frame that properly, understand the problem as well as we possibly could, knowing what we know at the time, right? We can't know everything. And there is the whole paralysis by analysis factor that you have to account for. But ultimately, let's know the problem first and foremost. And the second quote is a little bit more modern. Confucius is a few years ago. The Mandalorian is very recent. And this is the way, right? There's no one way to do it, of course, right? It's tongue in cheek. But to chart your course, whatever that might be, there's a way that your organization can do it well, using some of the resources that were presented today, or some of the things you might be able to find online or through training or through blogs or newsletters and books, to get better at product discovery, lessen the uncertainty, become more comfortable with it, lessen the risk as you look out 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it might be. And you can ultimately get better at it, lessen the uncertainty, lessen the risk, and be great at product discovery.